My name is Ryann Ford, and I'm an architectural photographer here in Austin. I want to share a personal project that I've been working on for about 4 years. This project has been a true labor of love, has been so much fun to work on, and is my most extensive personal project to date, so I'm really excited to share it with you. I'm going to start by giving you some backstory and then show you some of my favorite images from the series. When I moved to Austin from California about 6 years ago, I started noticing these cute little roadside tables along the different highways. We had the giant interstate rest areas in California, but it wasn't until living here that I really started to notice rest areas. I noticed that a lot of them looked really old, some of them had cool mid-century architecture, and some were really quirky, like they were shaped like a teepee or an oil derrick. I think what really drew me to this project was a mix of things. It was definitely the architecture, but I also just really love roadside culture and Americana. I've always been big into road trips, especially through the Southwest, and I think it's so fun to be driving along and see how each rest area is different. One night I decided to Google rest areas to see what they looked like in other areas of the country, and I came across a news article detailing the closure of many of them due to budget cuts, and they weren't just being closed, but demolished. I had considered doing a photo project on them before, but this was definitely the deciding factor. This is the first one that I ever came upon that was actually being torn down. This is in California. After seeing the rest area in California, I decided to really get serious with the project and start documenting as many as I could. To date, I've shot over 100 of them in 8 different states all over the Southwest and driven well over 10,000 miles. After shooting most of the ones near Austin, I decided it was time to hit the road for a real road trip. I usually plot a week-long trip around a few great ones that I've found online, and then end up finding lots more along the way. It's pretty lonely road tripping by yourself, but it's also pretty tough to find someone who can take off work for a week to drive around the desert looking for rest stops. Ever since high school, my mom would worry about me going on road trips alone, so I finally agreed to let her tag along on one of the trips, and we've been road trip buddies ever since. Half the fun of this project was the traveling, staying in crappy motels and camping in the middle of nowhere. Before every trip, we'd make a Trader Joe's run, stocking up on sushi and 2-buck chuck. Now I'm going to show you some of my favorite images from over the years. This is up near the Texas-Oklahoma border, near Thackerville. This one is actually closed down too, so I wouldn't be surprised if it was torn down soon. We actually had to jump the fence to take this photo. What's cool about all these rest stops is that no two are exactly the same. Back when the interstate highway system was developed in 1956, it standardized highway design from coast to coast. Whether you were in California or New York, the thickness of the pavement and the width of the painted lines were the same. The one aspect that stayed with the jurisdiction of each state was their rest area design, and that's why they're all different. This is Monument Valley in Arizona. I've always had an eye for minimalism, and I think there's just something beautiful about the way that these lone tables sit out on the stark landscape. I purposefully shoot them all from the same angle so that only the table and the landscape change. I wanted to document them and create an archive, but I also wanted the photos to be beautiful and really emphasize their design and how different they all are. I really tried to shoot them all in various conditions, different times of the day, and in different seasons. The next 2 slides are in Saguaro National Park in Arizona, and I want to show the difference between the old and the new. This one was built in the 1930s by the CCC, and you can really see that it has a lot of personality. The tables here were more like little houses. Unfortunately though, the roof was caving in, so it was fenced off and closed, and probably will have to be torn down soon. Once they are demolished, or just fall apart completely, they usually just replace them with these generic concrete tables. This is one of the first ones that I ever shot. I had read about a rest area in Flower Mound, Texas, north of Fort Worth, that was supposedly a breeding ground for crime. Evidently, a lot of prostitution and drug deals went on there, and it was scheduled for demolition. I knew I didn't have much time, so I jumped in my car one Sunday and drove up there to shoot it. A few weeks later, sure enough, I had to drive up there again for work, and it was gone. While doing my Google image search of rest areas a while back, I came across an amazing one. The tables were covered by teepees, and all I knew was that it was in West Texas somewhere. I did a bit more research and found out that it was in Big Bend. A few months later, some friends and I ended up going to Marfa for New Year's, and I sweet-talked them into taking a break from Marfa for a quick trip down to the border to find this elusive teepee. On the way home from Marfa, we stopped to shoot this rest area. I'm shooting, and I look up, and there's these people walking their longhorn across the rest area. I was cracking up and kind of in disbelief. But in the meantime, my friend put 2 and 2 together and realized it was Bevo. They were coming home from the Rose Bowl. I think this is definitely my favorite rest area story. Out of all the locations that I've shot, this is by far my favorite. This rest area is in White Sands, New Mexico, in southern New Mexico, just outside of Las Cruces. As I mentioned before, I love the minimalism of it. It's hard to believe it's sand, it really looks like snow. It was the middle of summer, right after a thunderstorm, and no one was around, and it really was an amazing place. From one of my favorites to one of the creepiest, this is Walker Lake, Nevada. From a distance, it looks like a gorgeous desert lake, but when we got out of the car, we saw that the place was totally infested with giant spiders. They were everywhere. On the high-res file, you can actually see one hanging from the roof. It was so weird, I googled it and sure enough, it was even in the news. Other than the tables, there were so many other random little details at the rest stops, like this box, serving travelers. I wish we had had one of these at the previous rest area because I definitely did not approve of the spider infestation. Even after traveling over 10,000 miles, there are still so many that I need to document. My dream is to assemble this collection into a book, because soon, these images will be the only artifact that remains.